Hello everyone. Today we are going to talk about an emotion that we all struggle with from time to time: shame. This feeling arises when we have done something wrong or when we feel that we have failed to live up to society's expectations. When managed correctly, however, shame can become a tool that develops and guides us. When it is mismanaged, it becomes an obstacle that limits our lives. In this video, I will share 6 powerful ways to take control of your shame and act with confidence. If you're ready, let's get started. Understand the source of embarrassment. Embarrassment is a complex and natural part of being human. It often occurs when we overstep our boundaries or when we feel we are not living up to society's expectations. To manage this emotion, however, we first need to understand its origins. Embarrassment is usually fueled by 3 main sources: societal norms, our own internal criticism, and our past experiences. Society sets certain rules and norms for individuals to live together. From childhood, we are taught what is considered right and wrong. Although these norms are useful for maintaining order, they can sometimes limit our individual uniqueness. When we act outside the ideal ways of behaving in a given society, we are exposed to society's judgment and experience a sense of shame. For example, being afraid of making mistakes when speaking in public or feeling shy when expressing ourselves is a reflection of the impact of these norms on us. However, we need to remember that these expectations do not always reflect our true values. Often, the feeling of embarrassment comes from the rules set by others, and these rules may not be as important as we think. Self-criticism is another major source of shame. People are often cruel to themselves. The desire to be perfect brings with it the fear of making mistakes. When high expectations are not met, the feeling of failure is combined with shame. In this case, the inner critic comes into play, magnifying the mistake and turning it into a source of shame. For example, saying the wrong thing in a meeting is a natural part of being human. In our own minds, however, we may see it as a big problem. Learning to be kinder to ourselves at this point reduces the sense of shame. Mistakes are an important part of learning and do not define who we are. Another source of shame is traumatic experiences in the past. Memories of being ridiculed as a child, feeling unsuccessful in front of our parents, or feeling excluded in a social setting leave deep scars in our minds. These scars reappear unconsciously when we encounter similar situations. For example, someone who was ridiculed in the past for giving the wrong answer in class may hesitate to speak in a meeting years later. This fear is the shadow of a past memory and is not directly related to the present situation. However, recognizing and confronting this feeling is the first step in working on it. Asking ourselves, "Does this still define me?" can diminish the power of the trauma. Understanding the roots of shame is the first step in reducing its impact on us. Like any emotion, shame carries a message. Understanding this message allows it to become a tool to improve us. When you feel embarrassed, discover what the feeling is trying to tell you. Once you understand the source of the embarrassment, you can manage the emotion more clearly and create a freer path for yourself. Become more compassionate towards yourself. One of the most important steps in overcoming shame and becoming a more confident individual is learning to be more compassionate with yourself. Most people tend to criticize themselves harshly when they make mistakes or fail to meet expectations, but this kind of self-criticism feeds and deepens feelings of shame. However, making mistakes is a natural part of being human, and learning from them is one of the most important elements of personal development. Being compassionate to yourself starts with recognizing your inner critic. When you make a mistake or experience a failure, pay close attention to what you are saying in your mind. Often at such moments, we are quite harsh and cruel to ourselves. For example, thoughts such as, "Why couldn't I have been better?" Component placement. Everyone saw how incompetent I am, or I'm a failure, run through our minds. Rather than motivating us, such criticism makes us feel even more oppressed and reinforces feelings of shame. One of the most effective ways to break this cycle is to treat yourself like a friend. If a close friend was in the same situation, how would you approach them? You would probably support them gently and not blame them for making a mistake. So, why don't you show yourself the same compassion? By being more understanding of yourself, you can recognize your mistakes as part of a natural learning process rather than seeing them as a big problem. You can develop a more compassionate approach by asking yourself the following questions. What can I learn from this? How can I be more supportive of myself instead of being so hard on myself? And does this mistake really define who I am? Being hard on ourselves not only increases feelings of shame, but also damages our self-esteem. A compassionate attitude, on the other hand, not only reduces shame, but also increases our self-confidence and self-belief. It is important to remember that nobody is perfect. Making mistakes and learning from them is a fundamental part of being human and growing up. We need to accept our mistakes and see them as opportunities for growth, rather than ignoring them or punishing ourselves. Stoic philosophers also stress the importance of being kind to ourselves. Marcus Aurelius says that human nature is prone to making mistakes and that we can become a stronger person by accepting these mistakes. Epictetus, on the other hand, reminds us that we should concentrate on what we can control. Instead of being unnecessarily burdened by a mistake that you cannot control, focus on understanding the mistake and how you can improve your future behavior. Finally, showing compassion is a strength, not a weakness. When you are compassionate towards yourself, the effect of shame on you is weakened and your self-confidence is strengthened. Instead of judging yourself, try to understand and support yourself. A person's best friend is themselves. When you make a mistake or feel ashamed, remind yourself of the following sentence. This situation does not define me. This is just a moment. This is just an experience. With a compassionate perspective, you take the feeling of shame from being a judge against yourself and turn it into a teacher. When you adopt this perspective, you give yourself more space, you learn more, and you become a stronger person. Put embarrassment in perspective. One of the most effective ways of dealing with shame is to put it into perspective. Shame is often a distorted perception of reality. The embarrassing situation we are experiencing at that moment grows in our mind and becomes a much bigger problem than it really is. But if we step back and evaluate the feeling objectively, we find that shame is often not as important as we think. In a moment of embarrassment, our minds are often filled with thoughts such as, everyone is judging me, everyone will remember this, or they saw how badly I failed. In reality, however, these assumptions are often not true. People are so focused on their own lives and problems that they pay far less attention to other people's mistakes or embarrassing moments than they realize. For example, if you mispronounce a word when speaking in public, it can be a source of great embarrassment to you. But most people in the audience either don't notice or forget about it immediately. This is one of the key points in putting embarrassment into perspective. People often don't pay as much attention to our mistakes as we do. Another way to gain perspective is to remember that embarrassment is a temporary feeling. You may feel very embarrassed at the time, but the feeling will fade with time and usually be forgotten. Look back at your own life. If you remember an event in the past that made you feel very ashamed, you probably don't feel as ashamed now as you did then. This is because time diminishes the impact of emotions and allows us to see things more clearly. Thinking about how insignificant the things that embarrass you now will be in the future will help to relieve the pressure of that emotion. Another way to put shame into perspective is to focus on the lessons to be learned from the situation. Embarrassment can show us that something has gone wrong or that there is room for improvement. For example, if you are embarrassed because you were not adequately prepared for a meeting, it can serve as a reminder that you need to be better prepared in the future. In this way, embarrassment becomes a tool for learning and growth. To learn this lesson, however, you need to stop seeing shame as a punishment and place it in a broader context. Stoic philosophers advise us to look at things in the light of reason, not in the shadow of emotion. It is not events that disturb us, but the meaning we attach to them, says Epictetus. From this perspective, the source of embarrassment is not the event you have experienced, but the personal meaning you attach to it. If you evaluate the event itself objectively, you may find that many of the thoughts that fuel shame are actually far from reality. Finally, you can put the feeling of shame into perspective by asking yourself the following questions. How important is this really? Zrenia, will I remember this incident in a year? Zrenia, does this define who I am or what I am worth? Often the answers to these questions reveal that shame is not as important as you might think, because a mistake is just a moment and cannot define your life beyond that moment. When you put shame into perspective, you can reduce the weight of this emotion on you. By seeing the true extent of what you have experienced, shame becomes a learning opportunity rather than a personal crisis. Remember, shame is a part of life, and how you deal with it determines how it affects you. Expose yourself in small steps. One of the most effective ways of dealing with embarrassment is to expose yourself to embarrassing or uncomfortable situations in small steps. This is a practical way of overcoming the anxiety and tension caused by embarrassment. This is because embarrassment often stems from an unconscious fear, and the longer we do not face that fear, the stronger it becomes. However, by getting used to such situations in a controlled way, you can slowly neutralize your fears. The key to practicing this method is to start with small, manageable steps rather than big ones. For example, if you are embarrassed about public speaking, you could try speaking in front of a smaller group of people rather than trying to speak directly on a large stage. As a first step, you could get together with a few friends and share your thoughts. This type of setting is less risky and allows you to experience embarrassment in a safer way. Over time, you can increase these steps and aim to speak to a wider audience. Each small step in this process will reduce your anxiety and increase your confidence. Another benefit of putting yourself in uncomfortable situations is to realize that embarrassing moments are not as devastating as you might think. Most people avoid such situations because they are afraid of being embarrassed. Avoidance only reinforces feelings of shame. Instead, if you consciously put yourself in these situations, you may find that the embarrassment doesn't affect you as negatively as you thought it would. For example, if you say the wrong thing in a meeting, you may find that it is not as big a deal as you thought and that people quickly forget about it. Such realizations make the feeling of embarrassment more manageable. The key to success in this process is to be patient and compassionate with yourself. It is unrealistic to expect to completely eliminate feelings of embarrassment on the first try. This is a process of learning and getting used to it. Each attempt will take you a little further and improve your ability to cope with embarrassment. The important thing is to be aware of the small steps you are taking and to appreciate yourself for these efforts. For example, even making a short comment in a social setting when you are too shy to speak is a big step, and you should not underestimate the value of this achievement. When using the exposure method, you can set yourself small goals. For example, if you have social anxiety, you could aim to say a short hello to someone you don't know every day. This may feel uncomfortable at first, but over time you will feel more comfortable. After that, you can try extending the conversation a little. These small but steady steps will reduce the limiting effect of embarrassment and allow you to slowly overcome your fears. it is possible and natural to experience feelings of failure or embarrassment while practicing this method. However, you should remember that such experiences are part of progress. Every failure teaches you something and gives you a better understanding of how to deal with embarrassment. Instead of being afraid of failure, try to see it as a learning opportunity. Shame is there to help you grow, not to hold you back. In conclusion, the way to overcome embarrassment is to face it. Taking small steps in this process will help you both manage your fears and reduce the impact of embarrassment on you. By gradually exposing yourself to such situations, you can realize that embarrassment is just an emotion and does not define you. With each step, you will gain a little more courage and eventually learn to stop letting shame control your life. Be patient in this process, learn from your mistakes, and remember that every step you take makes you a stronger individual. Learn to be independent of others' judgments. Learning to be independent of the judgment of others is one of the most important ways of controlling feelings of shame. This is because embarrassment is usually caused by our concern about how other people see and judge us. But the truth is that we cannot control the opinions of others, and these opinions may not be as important as we think. Freeing yourself from the judgment of others can both increase your self-confidence and reduce the impact of shame on you. Concerns about the judgments of others are often exaggerated in our minds. Most people are so focused on their own lives and problems that they don't notice or care as much as we do about the mistakes or shortcomings of others. For example, if you say something wrong in a meeting, you may think that everyone will notice and talk about it for a long time. But the reality is that the vast majority of people either don't notice or quickly forget. This awareness reduces the impact of other people's judgments on you. If you tie your self-worth to the approval of others, you will find yourself constantly trying to meet their expectations. However, this effort is often both exhausting and pointless, because everyone has different expectations and value judgments. It is impossible to please everyone, so it is necessary to stop carrying this burden. The most important thing in life is to act according to your own values and principles, focusing on how you see yourself rather than how others see you is a powerful way to deal with feelings of shame. Learning to be independent of the judgments of others can begin by asking yourself the following questions. Whatever this person thinks of me, how does it affect my life? Swing. Do other people's opinions really define who I am? And what is really important to me? The answers to these questions often reveal that the judgments of others are not as decisive in our lives as we think. For example, the fact that a stranger makes a negative judgment about you does not change any aspect of your life. Similarly, when people in your inner circle criticize you, their criticism reflects their own point of view and not necessarily your true values. Stoic philosophers say that dependence on the opinions of others enslaves a person. Marcus Aurelius said, "Take care of your own soul, not the souls of others." This is a reminder to focus your energy on developing your own values and goals rather than on how others see you. Epictetus emphasizes that it is unnecessary to focus on what we cannot control. Since it is not in your power to change the opinions of others, focusing on them is a waste of time. Another way to gain this independence is to realize how little other people's judgments say about you. People often make judgments based on their own experiences, beliefs, and prejudices. What someone thinks about you therefore reflects their own world and has little to do with who you really are. The fact that someone criticizes you does not devalue you. On the contrary, the criticism is limited to their point of view. Understanding this reduces the importance you attach to the opinions of others and increases your self-confidence. Finally, learning to be independent of the judgments of others comes from embracing your own uniqueness. Every person is unique, and this uniqueness is a source of strength. Trying to mold yourself according to the expectations of others will lead you away from your true self. Getting to know yourself, establishing your own values and staying true to them is the key to freeing yourself from being dependent on the opinions of others. Remember that you know your life best, and only you can choose what is right for you. As you free yourself from the judgment of others, you will find that the feeling of shame has less of an impact on you. By focusing on your own values and learning not to give undue importance to the opinions of others, you can become a more confident and independent individual. Be patient and remember, the person who knows you best and what is best for you is you. Make shame a tool for personal development. Turning shame into a tool for personal growth means turning this intense and often negatively perceived emotion into an experience that develops and empowers you. Often, shame is the result of making mistakes, failing to live up to our expectations, or appearing inadequate in front of others. But if you approach this feeling with the right perspective, shame can become a driving force that moves you forward rather than holding you back. Embarrassment gives you important clues about yourself. Most often, embarrassment occurs when one of your values or beliefs is threatened. For example, if you feel embarrassed when you make a mistake during a presentation, it probably indicates that you are a perfectionist or that you care a lot about making a good impression in public. By analyzing this feeling, you can begin to understand what values and fears are triggering this embarrassment. This awareness not only helps you to know yourself better, but also serves as a guide for your personal development. Seeing shame as an opportunity for development begins with recognizing this emotion as your teacher, not your enemy. There is a lesson to be learned in every moment of embarrassment. For example, if you are embarrassed because you were not adequately prepared for a meeting, it reminds you of the importance of being better prepared in the future. If you are embarrassed about something you said in a social setting, it may indicate that you need to improve your communication skills or review the way you express yourself. Approaching embarrassment in this way helps you to recognize that it is not only a distress, but also a tool for transformation. Another way to turn this emotion into a tool for personal development is to see moments of embarrassment as opportunities for growth. People often avoid making mistakes or facing situations that make them uncomfortable. However, such situations offer the fastest opportunities for learning and growth. When you have an embarrassing experience, instead of seeing it as a failure, you can ask yourself these questions. What can I learn from this situation? Logically, how can I behave better in a similar situation in the future? And what aspects of myself do I need to improve through this experience? These questions weaken the sense of shame and replace it with a more constructive perspective. Stoic philosophers often emphasize that learning from mistakes and difficulties makes you stronger. A man's worth is measured by how he behaves in the face of difficulties, says Epictetus. Among these difficulties we can see shame. Making mistakes or facing embarrassment is part of life, and how you deal with these experiences determines who you are. In moments of shame, you can choose to draw strength from the feeling rather than letting it define you. Another way to turn embarrassment into a tool is to explore what makes you tick. Often, embarrassment is an indication of areas of your life that you want to improve and aspects of yourself that bother you. For example, if you feel embarrassed because you feel inadequate during a presentation, this may mean that you want to improve your public speaking skills. Seeing embarrassment as a sign can help you identify your priorities in life and take action accordingly. Finally, using embarrassment as a tool for personal growth means accepting the feeling and making peace with it. Trying to avoid embarrassment altogether can magnify it and limit you. Instead, accepting shame as a natural part of life reduces its impact on you. Get into the habit of telling yourself, this is a mistake, but it is not something that defines me. Learning from your mistakes and improving is the most powerful antidote to shame. Remember that embarrassment is a natural part of being human and a feeling that we all have in our lives. But instead of letting it hold you back, you can use it as a tool for growth. In every moment of embarrassment, you have the opportunity to learn something new about yourself and become better at the next step. When you adopt this perspective, shame is no longer an obstacle, but a guide that makes you a stronger and more mature individual. Embarrassment is a natural feeling that we all experience from time to time. However, it is entirely within your power to understand, manage, and transform this emotion. By applying the 6 methods in this video to your life, you can significantly reduce the impact of embarrassment on you and chart a more confident path for yourself. Remember, mistakes are part of being human. Have compassion for yourself, don't pay too much attention to the opinions of others, and see embarrassment as an opportunity for growth. This is a basic principle of both Stoicism and personal development. If you enjoyed this video and would like to see more, don't forget to subscribe to my channel and like the video. See you next video.